The cup is empty. It's a prop. And so begins the web of lies that shall surely become my vlogging 2017. So, since the last video, I spent a certain amount of time thinking about what I was going to do next. I had a couple of things I want to do, a couple of rants that I will get to eventually, a couple of history lessons that I wanted to cover, because I'm a bit of a history geek. And I had a lot of comments about the sign that was in the background of the last video. And that sign will be in the next video. Actually, the next video will be me talking about 3 artifacts. I'll speak of that at the end. But the decision was kind of made for me when last Sunday, well, just this Sunday, I was asked to preach this coming Sunday, as in tomorrow, at my church. And I've been forced to spend a portion of the week thinking about what exactly I was going to say. In the Anglican Church we have a lectionary, which means that every week we have a set of readings that the preacher doesn't pick, and they're meant to force. They do a lot of things, but one of the things they do is to force preachers to not preach their favorite sermon over and over and over and over, and to have to wrestle with some parts of the scriptures that are less comfortable for them, for whatever their theology is. So the scriptures that I've been given to work with for this coming week are all surrounding the questions of new beginnings. And I don't yet have the sermon written, which is uncomfortable given that I'm 12-ish hours from go, but it will be written, and it will be good. Actually, this is the 3rd time I've had a chance to preach, and with any luck, it'll be the first good sermon I've preached. The first time around, I did a very academic sermon, which was good. It was actually, I think, really well put together, but I was this is the history of the text, this is where they came from, how we interpret them in a sort of academic setting. The second time around was just capital C crap. We're not even going to pretend that sermon never happened. But this time around, I'm fairly comfortable with where I'm going. Come here. So, new beginnings. So we're going to be starting by talking about the church as an eternal institution, and an institution that has many very rich and deep traditions, but also a tradition that, and also an institution that is ever new and has to be ever new. The church, as traditionally understood, is the body of Christ. The church is the body of Christ. This is the cat. I'm sorry, this is going to be a constant inflection of all my videos, and short of locking him in the bathroom, it's just gonna have to be a thing, and I don't have the heart to do that. So, you're gonna have to put up with it. Anyway, where was I? The church is the body of Christ. And so, despite the church having traditions that go back thousands of years, at the same time the church is always called to reach out to those individuals who are more disadvantaged than one would otherwise hope. There's an old saw that the church is the only institution that exists for the benefit of people that are not its members. So, essentially, I want to talk about traditions in the church that are potentially represent an obstacle, or that are unfriendly to individuals who are not as privileged as many of the people that attend my parish. The classic example, well, not the classic example, the example that's particularly contemporary is gay marriage. It's one the church has been wrestling with for a while. And it's one that the church is slowly coming to terms with, and has to come to terms with quickly, but as with all institutional bodies, things move slowly. But the important thing to note here is that we have a tradition that's deep and rich and meaningful, and the aim is not to dispose of the tradition, the aim is to expand the tradition. The aim is to alter the tradition a little bit so that more people are involved. And once that's done, the tradition brings new life to new people and remains very, very much what it was previously, only broader. The older example in the Anglican Church, we went through this some years ago, the first females were ordained Anglican priests in the 1970s. And at the time, again, there was this concern that the tradition was being undermined, that this was going to be radical, that there was something fundamentally revolutionary about having a woman at the front of the church. But I've been in churches with women at the front of the church a lot, actually, and it's neither radical nor revolutionary. And I think that a lot of this is the church doesn't need to be radical. The church doesn't need to be revolutionary. The church needs to be the church, but it needs to be the church for everyone. And we're working on it, and it's happening. And I've been extraordinarily encouraged by what I've seen in the Anglican Church over the past 5-6 years. But we have to push harder, we have to do it faster, and we need to become a new church every day. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment. That will invariably change a little bit. It's going to get polished before it comes to sermon time, but that's roughly what I'll be looking at saying. It is ideal that it is not very long. The standard rule is that if the preacher goes over 5 minutes, the preacher is ceremoniously removed from the church. There isn't, I mean, if we're a Baptist congregation, it'd be different, but there isn't really a tradition of long sermons in the Anglican Church, which is as much a handicap as it is a help. So for the next video, this was unexpected. For the next video, I will be looking at a sign, a math textbook, and an atlas. All of them more than 50 years old. Two of them close to a century old. And I realize that when I say a sign, a math textbook, and an atlas, everyone immediately runs away and locks the door and tries to fend off the boredom monster with whichever weapons they have closest to hand. But I promise this is going to be interesting.